Hi, I'm LeeAnn Croft, and I am one of the principal architects and a founder of 1080 Architecture, Planning and Interiors here in Regina. After finishing high school at Leeboltis in Regina, I moved to Montreal, where I did a 4-year Bachelor of Architecture at McGill University. After my undergrad degree, I took a year off and worked at an interior design firm in Montreal as I debated whether I would pursue a Master's of Architecture or a Master's of Interior Design. Eventually settled on the architecture as it left all doors open to me in the world of design, and I went on to also complete my Master's of Architecture at McGill. There are many parts of my job, but much of it boils down to understanding what a space needs to do to work for the people who are going to use it. The interesting part of this is that we really need to understand what the people who are going to use the space do, and then figure out how the building design can help them do that thing better. This can be very diverse because one day you may be working with doctors and nurses to create space that can actually help to support the healing process. And the next day working on a school where you're looking to create spaces that inspire learning and offer different opportunities for space to support different learning styles. We do a lot of continuing education in a variety of areas so that we stay on top of the latest research and how design can support many different areas of daily life. Architecture and design isn't just about drawing buildings and creating plans for contractors to build from, although that is usually the end result. It's about understanding people and designing an experience using all the senses. For example, how does walking into a space with a very high ceiling make you feel versus an area with a low ceiling? A room filled with natural light where you can see outside versus a room with no windows. When you're in a gymnasium that echoes, or in a loud restaurant where you have to raise your voice to be heard, how does that sound quality in those spaces affect your experience, and what we do through design to change that experience by understanding how different materials can affect the quality of space. At the same time, architecture is also about building science and the way building systems work together as a whole. How does the position of the building on the site affect how it relates to the sun and wind and water? How can you use that to your advantage so that the building uses less energy? How do all the building materials and systems work together so that the building is functional, beautiful, comfortable, and efficient? There's a lot involved, and as an architect, you're thinking about all of these things at various points in the design process. In high school, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, because I was strong in art and math and science and wanted something that was creative but also used the research and problem solving that I loved. I was lucky to have a dad who was an architect, and I knew a bit about what he did, but mostly I saw that what he did didn't seem really like work. He loved what he did and loved helping clients through creative problem solving, and he seemed to have a lot of fun doing it. I think I knew for sure after the first design studio at university, connecting design to helping people and affecting the way we live in a positive way really resonated with me, and I found every aspect of it inspiring. It's changed quite a bit since I began my career over 15 years ago, but there are still assumptions that people make. I remember starting a new job a number of years ago, my boss asking me quite seriously as I made plans to go to visit a construction site for a project to make sure I didn't wear a pink hard hat. At first I was surprised that a pink hard hat even existed, and then quite insulted that this was one piece of advice or instruction that he thought to give me before heading out. That type of thing luckily has been fairly minimal in my career, or maybe at a certain point I was too busy to take notice of it. It's interesting now, universities, it's about 50% of students are female in the architecture programs, but only 17% become registered architects. There's a lot of factors, some of which have to do with taking time off to have a family or losing a year of experience early in your career to take a maternity leave. But with parental leave being split more and more between men and women, I think this is shifting, and it's starting to shift in the workforce. I personally have 3 children, and the second and third I just brought with me to the office. So part of what's changing too is the nature of the office environment becoming more family friendly and flexible to accommodate this. My advice to you would be to be curious, ask questions, dig deeper and create your own path. Take an area that you're passionate about or interested in and learn as much about it as you can on your own. There's so much expertise accessible to you both online and through podcasts that if you have a question or something you want to know more about, the tools are there and the experts accessible for you to reach out to. Develop good research and critical thinking skills, and don't be afraid to contact the foremost expert in the world in an area you're interested in. You'll be surprised how many will actually get back to you. In terms of my role models, probably my parents were my biggest role models growing up. They both really loved their chosen professions and continued learning throughout their whole careers. I think I always expected I would love my job, whatever I ended up doing, because I grew up with parents who did. Work rarely feels like work. It rarely feels like something I have to do, but something I love doing that I get to do. And I'm lucky enough to make a living from it. I think the field of architecture in general has so many possibilities. A foundation in design shapes the way you think about problem solving and the interconnection of systems, but also the physical, emotional, and functional impacts of design decisions. Design is connected to everything we do as humans, and it shapes the way we live, how we interact with other people, and how we feel. Also, it's a lot of fun. All right, I'm excited for our activity this afternoon. This one I wanted to start off in a bit of a different way with a presentation of a project that we recently completed, because it will help to give you an idea of what we do as architects. And then when I ask you to do the activity that's very much what we do, you'll have a sense of what that end result might be. So what I wanted to present was a school and community center project that we've just finished in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. It's called Legacy Park Elementary School, and it's connected to the Spark Center. This is a project we did in collaboration with Number 10 Architects out of Winnipeg, which is something we do all the time. Architects collaborate on very large teams. It's never just one individual. There's a team of probably 15 people just on the architect side, and then we collaborate with structural engineers, civil engineers, electrical and mechanical, and landscape architects as well to create the whole project. So overall, that project team is probably approaching 30 plus people, on larger projects even larger than that. So this is a project that we just did, completed in September of this year. It's quite large. It's a 650 student school, and then it's connected to a large rec center as well. So on this slide, what you're seeing is the site plan. And when we start to look at how a building sits on a site, it's really about the light and the sun and how do we want those elements to interact with the building. So as we're looking at a school, what side of the building should the playground sit on? We know that most of our good natural light, our warm sunlight, comes from the south. And so in this project, we faced a lot of our big glazed elements, our big windows in the school facing south. And we actually, in our Saskatchewan climate, chose to put our playgrounds partially on the south and partially on the north to capture some shade, because we're using our building as a bit of a shade element. Often that's a challenge when we think about the summer months, is finding a bit of shade as opposed to trying to always capture that sunlight. So we want warmth of the sun in the winter, but a bit of shade in the summer. So all of these things come together with drainage as well. How does water flow on the site? Is your site flat to begin with? Is there a bit of a slope? How can your building work with those features that are already there? So there's a lot of thinking that happens before you even really start to think about what goes into the building design. So this is what we ended up coming up with, how this sits. It relates to the existing streets. We were lucky enough to have a school that was built in a park setting, so in the existing Jubilee Park in Weyburn. And it kind of nestles in, and these two very large buildings are set back from the street, so they aren't really imposing right at that residential neighborhood, because there's houses right across the street from these larger buildings. So these are our floor plans. As we start to look at what the school needs, we start to think about how the different classrooms need to interact together. As we start to think about 21st century learning, which is how we design schools today, it's really about project-based learning. And so each learning community is around their own project-based center. We have areas where kids can collaborate, where teachers can collaborate together for team teaching. It's about activities, and it's about looking at what every student needs. So we need areas that can be focused, areas that can be for teamwork and collaboration, space for technology. So how can we design rooms that are set up so that you can be interacting with a smart screen or something on a projector, or tablets accessing screens? There's so many different learning styles that the spaces that we put into the building need to accommodate all of those different ways of working together. So spaces that are enclosed, and then spaces that are quite open. This is another kind of zoomed in version of the plan. So you're starting to see there's the lighter green color. That's all of our open space where kids can work together on things. And there's a lot of connection between the different areas. We also look at what things should be next to each other. So what we have here is a gym that connects to the stage, but also a stage that connects to the commons. So that area can be really flexible, and the stage actually opens both ways in this school, so that if you're doing something on that stage, it doesn't always have to be facing one direction. It can open up both directions. You can just advance to that one. So here's some images of the school. So after we'd done that design process, situating it on the site, looking at all the different needs of the school, and how many students there were and how they want to interact together around that project-based learning module, we look at how can this become a space that kids want to go to, that teachers want to teach at? How can it be an inviting space? How does that affect us as a person coming in? So there's different things. When we start to see windows, it gives us that sense of seeing what's inside, what's on the other side of that wall. It's inviting. We see there's a bit of playfulness in how those windows are set up. Looking at the building, you might think, oh, there's something interesting that's happening in there with the use of color and the ability to see into it with all of the glass, or glazing as we call it, in the building. Another view from the outside. So again, playing with color and using natural colors to fit into the landscape so it fits within the context of the site that it's in. A lot of natural elements. We start to play with pattern and color and texture because it does make us feel differently about the space. It makes us think differently about what might be happening in the building. And we look at different volumes of the heights of the ceiling. We play around with pattern. In this building, we wanted the building also to be a learning tool. So what you'll see on the walls here is actually a triangular pattern that is a fractal. And we wanted to play with the Fibonacci triangle as something that teachers could then use as an element to incorporate into the curriculum, and it became the motif for the inside of the school. So there was an element of relating that to leaves and nature, with the school sitting within the park setting, and it actually became the logo for the school and is seen in all different wings, and you'll see it at small versions and much larger scale. So we're incorporating pattern, but it also ties back to that learning component as well. This is the school library, so we're looking at spaces that are open and connected, interesting spaces where you can imagine you might curl up to read, or just inhabit it in a different way. So we are also having these as a bit of a nod to knots in trees. So if you're thinking about the tree trunk, those are little soft pattern elements that we're calling on those references for this school within the park. Color is something that we use throughout the building as a way to make each learning community unique. It's a little bit of a way to find your way in the school without having to have a name. So if someone is coming and English might not be their first language, you're able to orient yourself in the building by the color patterns. So it's an important thing about how we experience the building is how we understand without being told what the space needs to do. This is one of the areas with the bathrooms, so we had some fun with color here. I think it's probably one of our most favorite spaces in this school. It just gives a different way to think about bathrooms. They don't just have to be white boxes. They can be an area that's playful. Obviously, we want to encourage hand washing, and there's a lot of supervision that can happen as well for this area of the building. We do use natural light a lot. You'll see that throughout this building, that playing with the heights of the windows, the location of the windows, whether you can see out to the park or just have natural light come in is really important for how we feel about space. There's something about natural light that makes us feel good as humans, and we want to sit close to it. We want to be near it. When there's a window, we want to be in that room and not the room without the window. It's just something about the need to be connected to nature and the natural environment and the changing patterns of clouds and sunlight. It helps us to stay engaged, and our brains function better when we have connection to those elements. Just more areas of the school. So there's lots of big open spaces where you can gather with friends, you can work on projects. It really is meant to allow people to work at their own pace and with their own style of learning, because we know that kids, some are kinetic learners, you need to be moving a little bit to learn. Some are audio learners, so you learn better when you're hearing that, whether it's through a podcast or through the teacher talking. Others are better to read it. And so trying to look at all the different learning styles and create spaces within the school to make your own. Just a few more examples. Acoustics are a big thing in space as well, where we're looking at how the sound quality affects you. So what we're putting on the floor or on the ceiling can actually affect how the room makes you feel. So if you think about how you feel in a gym, it might be quite echoey because it's a loud, big volume space. There's a lot of hard surfaces, compared to how you might feel in a space where there's carpet on the floor. So there's texture that's absorbing some of that sound, and we're putting baffles or ceiling elements in the space that help to create that space feel more cozy, and you can have private conversations that don't carry throughout the space. And then elements of fun. So that's the light fixture there. It just creates a little bit of a distraction, and it animates the space to make it inviting and welcoming and a space that you want to be. Okay, on to our activity. So having looked a little bit at that project, we thought we would get you to actually be the designers for a new space within your own school. So your activity. Congratulations, you've been commissioned to design a new library for your school. What we're going to do in the activities, we're going to start with a visualization that's going to focus on the 5 senses, so how you feel in a space. When we do this, make sure you've got your handout with you. It should be part of the package. Have that with you when we do the visualization, because that's the second step. And the third step will be to draw or create a diorama of your design. So when you're finished, you can host a presentation to your peers in the school on what you've come up with for a design idea. You can talk and share about what works in those designs and do a bit of a pinup or a crit, which is something that's a big part of what we do in a design office, to share ideas and actually make our initial idea better by talking about it with each other. Some optional additional things you can do after you've done this, you can go and measure your existing library or other spaces in your school that you want to renovate and create a blueprint for the design. You can create a vision board for the library using images you might find in magazines or online to talk about the quality of the space. What are those textures or colors or patterns that you might find in the space that you come up with? Or if you really want to go further with this, you can download a free program called Google Sketchup. There's tutorials on there, and you can actually create a digital 3D model of the space that you've designed. Every design starts with a vision. So to begin the design of your new library, we're going to do a visualization exercise. So let's get started. First, we need to get into the right headspace. So I want you to take your handout and a pen, find a comfortable space to sit or even lie down, and when you're ready, close your eyes. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to get set up. Okay, make sure you are comfortable and take a few deep breaths. We're about to visit the new school library that you spent the last year designing. It is rumored to be an incredible space full of all the things the most important clients, the students, asked for in the new design. It has things people have never seen before in a library because it's so much more than a library. It's the new hub of the school, the place where students want to be more than anywhere else. The transformation is incredible, and everyone is very excited. You have just arrived. Have a slow look around. What do you see? Is it in the same place it used to be? Or did it move? Is it an addition to the building? What has changed? What are people doing in the space? Is it bright or softly lit? Look up. What does the ceiling look like? How high is it? What about windows? Where are they? What do you see when you look through them? Is there any technology in the space? Are there any plants? What can you smell? How does the space make you feel? Are there colors in the space? What are they like? Is there any fabric? Is there wood? Stone? What is the floor made of? Is it soft with carpet or clean and shiny with a hard surface? Or is it a warm wood? Look around at the space. Is there an inviting place to sit? What area would be good to read a book in? What does it sound like? Is it quiet? Or do you hear the sound of people talking and laughing? How does the space make you feel? Energized? Calm? Focused? Curious? What can you imagine doing in the space? What projects could you do there? What are people saying about the space? Feeling very proud of what you've helped to build, look around one last time at your beautiful library and try to remember every detail. In a few moments, you'll come back to the room you started in. Slowly open your eyes and find the handout. Take your time and answer the questions on the sheet before you start the design.